Well, all right, boys, thanks for doing this. It's a pleasure to sit down with the gents of Taxman, both Dave Yancey, head brewer, and co-founder Nathan Huelsebusch. So, cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I love you guys, what you guys do. I mean, I love the environment that you guys create at all your different places. I went down to your Death and Taxes Day, or now Deadline release, got some merch, so I'm wearing the Dead Man today. So again, appreciate you doing this, but one of my favorite jump off points anytime I sit down with anybody is kind of get the origin story. Now, obviously you guys have a very unique one that includes going overseas to Belgium. I'd love to kind of hear that, if you could kind of give us
Yeah, sure, happy to. So before starting Taxman, my life was in the tax world. I'm a CPA. Still, I guess my license is technically expired at this point. I haven't been doing the continuing education. But so prior to that, I was CPA, worked in Cincinnati, had the opportunity to move to Belgium for 3 years. Was in Belgium doing U.S. tax with Deloitte. Had the pleasure of going around all the small breweries in Belgium. We toured a lot of them. Really fell in love with the beers, the unique flavors imparted by the yeast, and just some of the history of the Trappist breweries, all of that. Like, it's just a cool story. There's a lot of different varieties that are brewed in Belgium. Belgium's small, but had like 2,000 breweries at the time. Oh, wow. Tons and tons of different styles. You look at some of these old styles like Lambic and Guz and all this stuff. They're really only produced in that part of the world. So after 3 years in Belgium, had the opportunity to move to Indiana to be a tax director at Cummins. Worked at Cummins for 4 years. And the reason we kind of ended up in the south side of Indianapolis was I worked in the Columbus office. My wife worked at Cummins at the Indianapolis office. So Greenwood, that Bargersville area, was kind of the halfway point for us. So we got the itch about a year and a half into living here. We spent a lot of time downtown, a lot of time at Broad Ripple. We're like, man, there's got to be like something on the deep south side of Indianapolis. Like, there's got to be a local restaurant, a local brewery. If nothing's going to happen, like we felt kind of obligated to make to kind of pursue that dream of starting the brewery. So about a year and a half in, we started writing the business plan. It took about a year and a half to write the business plan. 2013 really started getting the financing pulled together and all of that. Identified the building that we have in Bargersville. It was cheap, like badly out of shape, weeds in the parking lot, like horrid. Told the people that ended up investing, hey, we're gonna start a brewery here. We're gonna focus on Belgian beer. And they were like, well, I don't know. That's pretty crazy. Like, it's a pretty niche thing. Sure. But ended up getting together the resources and convincing a bank to lend us some money too, and took the plunge.
Gotcha. Now, spending time in Belgium, have you been back since you opened up Taxman?
No, unfortunately, we haven't had the opportunity. So moved here in 2011. Haven't had the opportunity to go back. We had plans to go back last year, and obviously with everything that was going on, we were going to go in July. Just didn't work out.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things I love about the craft brew universe is the creativity with the names. And you guys have a fantastic logo and a theme kind of around everything you do within Taxman. I think you have the Ben Franklin quote on the website, "You're assured nothing in life except two things, death and taxes." So what goes into kind of deciding on the names, and as you guys kind of cook up the things that you do each year?
Well, initially it was like, what tax terms are, I would say, like more mainstay tax terms, like deduction, exemption. All of these are very much like things that are familiar to people when they're filling out their 1040s every year. Sure. So that was easy. Now it's gotten a little bit harder because we're cranking out 50 different beers a year. Yeah. So it's how do you try to get a fun tax pun that also plays into the style of beer that we're doing, or that kind of makes sense for that specific beer. So it's very much a community effort, I'd say, at this point. Like, we normally release anywhere from like 10 to 12 new beers a year, so it's not like we have to rename everything. Sure. But we kick those around usually in the fall and go back and forth on some variations, and then kind of create the labels.
Nice. Well, it seems like you guys have had a love of craft beer for a long time, but take me back to the first craft beer that hooked you. What set you on the path to say, hey, beer's going to be definitely a bigger part of my life moving forward?
I'll let David take that one first.
So, I think the first craft beer that someone handed me was a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And up till then it was just your regular domestic Budweiser stuff, like
Sure.
or maybe a Shiner Bock. I'm from Texas.
Okay.
But the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and I was like, whoa, what is this? What are all these flavors? And it was the hops in that beer, and I still like that beer a lot to this day. But,
Sure. I mean, the scene has definitely exploded
Oh, yeah.
since
back
since
then you had
since Sierra
strong
Nevada,
ones.
maybe Sam Adams, a couple
Yeah.
different blends.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. I mean, just here in Indiana alone, we got over 160 different breweries. And that's one of the things I try to when I speak with the owners is to see where you guys draw inspiration from, right? So obviously the trip from Belgium, but is there any specific one in Belgium that you've kind of built your inspiration with what you guys are doing at Taxman, or maybe someone stateside, Dave?
Ooh, man. Yeah.
I mean, so I spent a week in Belgium back in 2014 maybe, or 13, I don't remember now, but Cantillon, and I had already had some of their beer before I went there, but that was like one of the breweries I had to go to because I just love their sours. Their goose is like, it's just amazing. So definitely had to
Super
go there.
unique too, flat, like just kind of like, I think unusual for most people.
Yeah.
When I was there, so I was a beer nerd to begin with. I did some home brewing, but never with any degree of success. I was a terrible brewer. Like these guys will attest to that. But I would go around and I had this book. It was called The Good Beer Guide to Belgium, and he had like a star system in all of his for all of his breweries and all the beers. So I would go to each of the breweries that Tim Webb was, I think, the author, highly rated, and I'd taste the beer and I'd say, okay, cool, I like this about this style. So I think for each of the mainstay styles that we have, like double, triple, quad, there was definitely like a hierarchy of those styles in Belgium from different breweries that I appreciated. So like in the triple world, like I've always had an affinity for triple Carmelite. I think it's just an amazing triple. It's light, it's refreshing, but it's almost got this lemon zest. So I think that we took inspiration for the exemption recipe from that, and within the quads, you've got obviously the super famous Trappist beers like the Chimay Blue and the Rochefort, what is it, 10? Rochefort 10,
yeah.
West Fluttering 12. I get them all. Like all of those styles. Like, what about those profiles do you like? Is it the excessive amount of special B? Is it raisin? Like, and try to just play off each of those flavor profiles in the beers that we do.
Nice. Now, you guys, like I said, you put out a tremendous amount of beer a year. You guys are mad scientists. You're constantly looking for different trends to maybe bring out to the masses, and those are exemplified as successes that make it to your taps. But I always love asking this question from guys that brew: is that there has to be something that maybe you tried that just didn't work out, that came out dead on arrival, and you're like, nah, we won't try that again. So, kind of give me a story behind something that you thought was going to be great, but ultimately was something that you bailed on.
I mean, at Taxman, I don't think that I've ever had any of
Knock
our
on wood
stuff
here. I'm getting
that-
nervous.
Yeah, that like was just a real big flop. There are some recipes that I wish had come out a little different, or my vision for it was different than the way it actually came out, but it was still pretty decent, right? But when I was first home brewing, like I definitely had a lot of recipes that I thought I was going to nail, and they were far, far from getting nailed, But yeah, I mean, at Taxman, we just haven't had any just massive failures. It's usually been like a situation where one time we had a fermenter that the solenoid locked open and it crashed our tank before it was finished fermenting. So we had to figure out what to do, and we heated it back up and it fermented, but it just didn't taste the same. So we added some fruit to it and we let it age a little bit, and it was a very good beer still. It just wasn't exactly what our mainstay beer was supposed to be, right? So there's nothing wrong with it. It just wasn't something that we could put our name on as this is this beer that you're used to having, because we have pretty high standards when it comes to releasing the beers, and they have to be, for the sake of consistency, they have to follow these certain criteria. So, and that beer, was perfectly tasty, and we enjoyed it. Actually, we started making a seasonal that comes back every once in a while based on that. So a lot of times those like things that happen turn into a good thing, because you learn something or you figure a new technique or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. So when in doubt, just throw it into a barrel, put some fruit on it, maybe sour it for sure, and you can come up with was something.
Yeah.
But we've had some stuff that, like, from a marketability standpoint, hasn't been quite where we wanted it. I think what we've seen is, like, the Indiana market likes certain products. It doesn't like other products. You don't have the throughput that we were looking for. So, like, one thing that we've found, and this is more specific, I think, to this market, is that the word Saison isn't necessarily a word that people either understand or associate. And we've found that, like, that Saison, if you're branding something as Saison, it's more difficult to sell. So we try to work with the terminology, I'd say, a little bit, use the word farmhouse instead of Saison, and that works for us in a lot of cases.
Gotcha. Out of all the blends that you've had, what is your personal favorite that you have amongst your lineup? I know it's a tough question. Everybody looks at it's like their beers like kids, right? You know, I love them all the same, right? But if you had to get as your go-to, what's your go-to within your lineup?
For me, it varies seasonally. I'm usually like, oh man, I'm so happy this is back. I'll drink it for a week, and then it's like, okay, what do we have coming out next? Because I would say the good thing about what we're doing is we're releasing a new beer every week to 10 days, I'd say.
Yeah.
So you've got something new to try. So for me, I guess I'm very much a flavor of the month or flavor of the week kind of drinker.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it depends on the recipe. Like, so there was a beer we made called Chiversified, and that one, like, kept me up at night because we used real whole spices that we ground and we added into the brewing process at a number of different stages. And so, like, making sure we don't put too much clove in. Clove is hard. Like, there's some spices like that are nerve-wracking. So it really came out well. I was very pleased with the way that beer came out. It wasn't like necessarily a beer that I would crush every night or something like that, but it was a really, really delicious beer, and it was very, very much what I wanted to make. So, like, I was super happy with that beer. Now, if I was just going to drink a beer at the end of the day, like, so this one is, we call it assessment number 2, and this is a Brett fermented Saison that we aged in wine barrels, and like he was mentioning earlier about selling Saisons, they don't fly off the shelf, but, like, I just really like a very simple Saison, the recipe, and if you can age a little Brett with it, it's even better, you know.
Gotcha. Now you guys have gastropubs attached to a lot of what you guys are doing at Taxman. Do you kind of go into it thinking what would pair very well with this particular beer before you kind of bring out a new dish or whatnot? What goes in behind?
I wish we had time to do more of that. Like that, yeah. In an ideal world where you had, like, perfect, you were perfectly staffed and everything was running perfectly. We would love to do that where it's like, this chicken dish would pair perfectly with the triple. I would say we try to give our team suggestions. Our menu does change quite a bit. Like we change out. So each restaurant has a different menu, and then within the restaurants, they change quarterly. And so they're running different specials every night. So the chefs tend to run in I would say a parallel path, but not necessarily in sync with what we're doing brew-wise. I think there's definitely some opportunities to improve that, but currently I'd say it's not as aligned as it should be.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things I try to do when I sit down with any one of my clients is a lot of them come in to having a scarcity mindset, right? And my goal is to try to get them to think with abundance and kind of think more with a growth mindset. Now, as it pertains to running a business and operating business, growth can be a tricky thing, right? Because you don't want to get over your skis and get extended, but you want to still get some momentum there. And obviously, you guys now have 3 gastropubs, you have the brewery, in 7 years, which I think is an extraordinary achievement. How have you guys managed the growth of Taxman where it hasn't scared you, but it kept you excited, right?
Yeah. I would say at times it's definitely been bumpy, and we've had to say, okay, what do we need to do? This didn't quite work out as we expected. Initially, when we were doing our we've always, for the most part, self-distributed our beer. So we work directly with our on-premise accounts, our grocery and liquor stores as well, to get them beer placement. Initially, we were of the mindset, let's get in as many places as we can. Let's put beer on draft as many places as we can. But what we found is the resources that were required to service those accounts, certain accounts just didn't quite make sense. We had at one point we had over 1,700 accounts, but each account may have averaged $150 to $175 a month in sales. So what we've done since then is really narrowed down our focus, focused on the accounts that have higher volume, driven volume through those accounts, but cut off. So we're down to under 400 accounts now that we sell to every month from 1,700, and it's just that has allowed us to really focus our limited resources on the accounts that are pushing volume from a distribution standpoint. From a restaurant and operational standpoint, one of the things about beer that you realize early on is margin isn't great when you're selling it directly to a consumer, like directly to a retailer. So if we can capture some of that retail margin on our own taps at restaurants, that's been, that's a tremendous revenue boost for us. So the restaurants have kind of fallen in line with our desire to consolidate down how many accounts we sell to.
Gotcha. Now, coming from a tax background, and Dave, I know we talked about coming from a telecom background, is being an owner-operator of a brewer or a head brewer, is it different than you would have expected it to be going in, right? You got 7 years to kind of look back and say, all right, is this, because some look at, hey, I want to own a business, it's a dream job of mine, this is a passion, but you got to mix the viability with the passion, right? So kind of give me your flavor. Is it all that you've thought it would be going in?
Oh, I think some of it, whenever you're first looking, I'm gonna change my career path and I'm gonna go into brewing. A lot of it's you thinking about the craft and this romantic image, and it is that, but it's also just it's a work. It's a job, it's a business, and I think a lot of people I know in the industry, it's like that business part of it grates on them. But I very much enjoy. I'm glad I made this change in my career. The lifestyle that it allows is it's much different than when I was doing project management in wireless, and I enjoy it a lot more. So I think that my life quality is better. And we do get to do some really cool stuff. Like whenever we're talking about the number of beers we release every year, it's like we don't make like 60 new ones every year because some of these are returns from previous years. But it's like it's always something new. There's always a challenge. So I very much, enjoy it.
I like the way you frame that up. Like you do start with a very romantic notion, like, making beer, we're going to sell the beer, it's going to be great. And then you think like, wow, kegs are heavy and, logistics are tough. And man, running a restaurant is terrible and turnover is it's just industry-wide, it's a problem. So it is from my perspective, like I was very much a technical person in the accounting world. I spent most of my day at my desk looking at numbers and figuring out how to, bring back cash to the U.S. And I didn't spend a lot of time necessarily like guiding people, instructing people, talking to people, making decisions. So I think, overseeing 3 restaurants and the brewing, distribution, all of that stuff, you're so much more involved in people's lives. You're more involved in just the conversations you have every day. It feels I feel much more alive if that's a thing. Like it's a vibrant, tiring day, but it's super. I mean, it's so much more rewarding than what I was doing previously.
Gotcha. Now you mentioned having this connection to the people that you work with. As an advisor, I'm very connected to my clients' lives, right? And you guys are having been down to your death and taxes day, very connected to your community. How important is it for you guys to be very connected to Bargersville, Fortville, what you guys are doing in greater Indianapolis, that you kind of have the heartbeat of what's going on in the city, but you want to be entrenched in it? What does that mean to you to be kind of involved in the local community and have these events that people come out to?
I think it's everything for us. So, initially when we got started in Bargersville, people outside of Bargersville were very skeptical. Why Bargersville? What's down there? There's 4,000 people in town. And having lived there, I'd lived there at the time we opened for about 4 years. I knew that there was like a base of people that wanted to have something that was local, that they could call their own, that was part of their community. So they fortunately answered the call when we opened our doors, and have supported us ever since. And just being able to give back to that, being able to participate, in the community discussion and be a resource for the town to grow and continue to build a dynamic environment in each of the places that we operate is pretty special. Initially, we were in Bargersville, then we were in Fortville, and we just really love the aspect of like the small main street that may, in Bargersville case, like they'd written it off in the town development plan. They say, well, we're going to have to shift our focus to attracting businesses onto the 135 corridor because there's a lot of vehicle traffic there. And it's like, well, why can't there be traffic here? We just need to kind of reimagine what kind of businesses need to go in here. And being able to be one of the catalysts in that area for some development has been good.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. Is there any trends in the space that you guys are in favor of that you see? Like, Dave, I know you said sours. Sours are starting to, really take a hold. Is there any other trends that you are thinking about exploring further with what you guys are doing at Taxman other than the sours? Or
we always are talking about different things. Whether or not some of these various things might happen or not. We do like to have a conversation going about trends in the industry and whether or not we need to take part. Is it a fad? Is it going to stick around? Those kinds of things. And even like with our sour program, we very much want to keep the sour program, but like, is it something we want to focus more attention and resources on, or is it something we want to kind of just keep going as it is? Our non-sour barrel program is something that we've increased volume through some, and but there's always a conversation kind of going on.
Yeah.
One
of the wider spread trends, and this has been happening for a couple of years, is like the death of the large format bottle. So for like the last 3 years, the large format bottle has been like the worst selling segment in beer retail beer. So the challenge that we have is our large format bottles are great because they can handle the pressure of bottle conditioning without exploding. And we don't have the technology currently in-house to can any of our sour beers. We can't safely can them without them potentially exploding. So, we've looked at like how can what resources do we have to add to start putting beer into cans that's sour, and it's pretty complicated because you've got the risk of infection of your line if you do it one way without pasteurizing. We don't want to pasteurize everything because none of our beer currently is pasteurized, and we're worried about how that would influence some of our core beers. So I think it's more how do we continue to grow, because we love the sour program, but how do we grow the sour program in an economical way with a limited footprint in Bargersville to package everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you're starting to see these trends now. Once a brewery reaches a certain size and scale, they may kind of branch off to be more of a beverage company. You've seen some go the distillery route. You've seen some bring out seltzers. Do you guys envision you'll go outside the realm of beer and move into something like that, or just mainly concentrate with a singular focus?
Well, we did flirt with the seltzer. We have one on right now. It is gluten-free. Okay. It is 100%. Sugars that aren't derived, like sugars derived from, but not grain. Until recently, you couldn't technically package a seltzer given the way that the Indiana law was written. So you had to have malt, specifically grain, in the beer in order for it to qualify as beer. That recently changed. So this legislative session, they made it possible to legally package sour or seltzers without any risk. They obviously weren't enforcing that because enough people are doing it currently. So it's an opportunity. Maybe we'll pursue it. This one actually I think turned out really well. It's just a matter of like, do we have the capacity to do it? One of the challenges, and Dave can attest to this, is we have the ability to produce about 6,000 barrels a year, maybe, if we're really going for it. Mm-hmm. Last year we were just over 5,000. So we really don't have a lot of, and that was just over 5,000 with all of our restaurants at a very diminished state in terms of what their demand was. So we really don't have a lot of capacity right now. So we're really at a point where it's, do we want to expand the brewery? Do we want to expand our packaging area? Do we want to build a new building? That's a conversation we're having now.
Gotcha. Question I always get with the bourbon age stuff. And for me personally, like my palate either wants a bourbon or it wants a craft beer. And sometimes it blends in between, sometimes don't just, mesh with my palate there. Do you guys, what has been the feedback for a lot of the bourbon aged barrel stuff that you guys have done? Have you heard similar feedback, or is it, hey, this is good for me and maybe I'm just speaking out my ass here, that was just me,
Sometimes we experiment with different beers in barrels. Bourbon is a good one. Bourbon goes well with a lot of different stuff. The flavors that come out of the barrels do, and especially like we do like a deduction in bourbon barrels, and our quad called qualified in bourbon barrels, and those just blend really well. The vanilla goes well with that sweeter malty beer that both of those are. So we've had a lot of success with those. Sometimes we've done, and it's not even just bourbon barrels, but just other more exotic barrels we'll get sometimes, and I'll put a beer into it that we think this is going to pair really well, and it maybe isn't exactly what we had thought when it comes out. It's always, they're all good. I don't think we've had any barrels that I just really didn't like. But
Definitely from a retail perspective, selling a bourbon barrel-aged beer is significantly easier than, say, a peach brandy barrel-aged beer.
Right,
sure.
But I would say like the flavor profile, so we last year we put our exemption, our Belgian triple, in a peach brandy barrel. Absolutely phenomenal. We're doing that one again, next month?
I believe so, yeah.
That'll be released next month, but the pairing of like the citrus and some of the clove notes of the underlying beer within the sweetness and that peach forward flavor from the barrel, just it works out great, especially as a higher alcohol summer beer. Like the tough thing is like bourbon barrel aged beers, people recognize the barrel, they recognize bourbon, they sell well, but you don't necessarily want a bourbon barrel aged beer in the summer when it's 95 degrees. So
Super
finding
hot.
these alternative beers that we can put in, alternative barrels that we can put beers in.
Maybe that's my problem. I'm drinking it the wrong season, right? I need
Yeah.
I need to wait till it gets a little chilly here.
Yeah, like a campfire and a barrel-aged quad, bourbon barrel-aged quad. Unbelievable. Great.
Nice.
Yeah, we did one. It was deduction in muscatel barrels. It's a wine barrel, and I loved that beer. That came out so well. It didn't move as well as I would have hoped, but again, some of that's people look at it and say, well, what's muscatel? I don't know what that is. It's not a U.S. wine that people are familiar with, or most people aren't. But.
So you say that's a blend that maybe it didn't sell as well as you liked. Is there one that you kind of were surprised that it really took a foothold? And because I've had this conversation with a few different brewers that, hey, we needed something that was seasonal. Well, let's make a cream ale, and then boom, now it's like 40% of the sales, and they're like,
right,
this is a mainstay now. Is there anything like that that surprised you guys that you've kind of made a mainstay now?
I'll have to think.
I don't think we've had any like surprise home runs. It's our major volume is through I would say like predominantly our seasonal beers that we produce every year. So it's not like we've come up with one and we said, oh my gosh, we got to make this like a quarterly release because it's so good. We did have a lot of success, still do, with a beer called Bean Counter. It's a coffee aged like Belgian brown ale that we release for a little bit longer than a month period, because normally everything's like strictly at a month, but we produce a little bit more, so it carries over more like a 2-month period. But beyond that, it's not. We don't see like an overwhelming shift.
There's like we'll decide packaging mix, so like how many barrels go into cans, how many barrels go into kegs, and we'll say we're gonna go keg heavy on this one, and the cans will disappear like in a week, and then we're kicking ourselves because we have all these kegs. And the cans are sold. Or we go the other way, and sometimes it's just you can't predict the unpredictable.
Man,
you know?
Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah. Well, especially the last like 12 months, it's just
Sure.
crazy.
Oh yeah, 2020 threw everything out the window. We had
All of our
a
forecasts
pretty
wrong.
good forecast from multiple years of doing this and refining our techniques and our plans, and then 2020 just said no.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of been like a throwout year. Like I've talked to a couple guys where like canning has just like exploded for them in 2020.
It is absolutely for us.
So that's awesome because I'm starting to see more of your cans in multiple different outlets and liquor stores and various other places. So that's
when we shut down, we were kind of like, what are we going to do here with all this beer? The pubs were shut down for we didn't know how long, and we had to put everything in cans, and we were worried, are we going to be able to move all these cans? But they moved. And we had to do that for a while, and even now we're very much can heavy compared to what we were in 2019.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see. I mean, obviously the community here in Indiana. I mean, it seems like everybody knows everybody. If you guys had to pick another Indiana brewer, other than your own, that you could say, I really enjoy this beer. If I had no choice to drink, I can't drink mine. I got to drink a few different. Who would it be? Yeah, it's a little loaded, but you know.
Oh, shoot.
Oh man.
I don't even know if I'm going to answer it. Yeah.
I know, right? No, there's a lot of really good beer in Indiana. That's one thing I think people don't realize, like how many like really really good breweries there are in the state of Indiana.
Sure.
People just and maybe the people that know, but a lot of people I don't think realize that like we have really good craft beer here. A lot of people in our state win medals at like Great American Beer Festival or the World Beer Cup, some of the really big ones. There's just a phenomenal amount of good beer. There's also some bad beer. We're not going to go into.
We're not going to name names, right?
Yeah, but there's really really good beer here. Like I very much enjoy Upland. I enjoy. I like Sun King. I enjoy them a great deal.
Yeah. I live downtown, so I tend to go to the places that I can walk. So I can walk to Metazoa, I can walk to Upland, Sun King, Indiana City. So I typically don't do anything other than ride bikes and walk when I have the opportunity. So that's
nice.
That's where I end up going, just because I enjoy their beer, yes, but also because it's super close, super convenient.
Yeah, Metazoa, they're really really good.
Nice.
I mean, the thing is, like, I could list off like a huge list of really good Indiana brewers. Like, there's just so many of them.
Yeah, I think we've got a very diverse scene. It's interesting because I don't feel like, in general, it's an oversaturated scene. We have a lot, but I think everybody's doing things just a little bit different, and they have different themes involved, and I don't feel like we've hit that saturation point. But there are plenty of places that are knocking it out.
Nice. Well, great. Well, I call this, my why, what, how question. And it's threefold. So when I sit with a client for the first time, I'm trying to uncover the why, right? So, one of my favorite books is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Because if you know what the why is and what drives the why, the how and the what become easier to understand and more attainable. So as it pertains to you guys in your business here at Taxman, what is the why that drives what you do every day? What is it about your process that makes you unique? And then how does that process make you stand out amongst all the others that are in the kind of Belgian beer mix, right? So threefold. Why, what, how? What do you think?
Well, the why for us, maybe it's as easy as nobody really is focused entirely on doing Belgian style beer. Like nothing that we do has yeast that really drifts outside of, like we use some like Norwegian yeast in some of our stuff, but really almost everything is of Belgian origin. Mm-hmm. I think really truly the why is because we want to create authentic Belgian style beer that's better than the beer that you can buy from Belgium. A lot of the stuff you get here, especially in Indiana, super old. It's not in great shape by the time it gets here if it's from Belgium. So It's like the why is because we're filling a gap in the market that otherwise would continue to exist because nobody really wants to drift as far as we have into that Belgian space.
Gotcha.
Is that fair?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, really, you get a beer that's from Belgium and it's been in a container. It's been traveling for a long time. It's made to a slightly different standard to help it endure that travel. So than what you'd get in Belgium. Like if you went and bought a fresh Belgian double, at a pub there, it's just not going to taste exactly like the stuff you buy here unless you buy it from a place like us that specializes in trying to recreate that.
And then the what piece was.
Yeah. So what? Obviously, you're the mad scientist, Dave. So as a brewer, what do you do in your process that makes you unique?
Well, I mean, so we don't filter anything.
Yeah.
We don't centrifuge. We don't pasteurize. We've talked about doing some things along that to achieve some things with some of our sour program beers that we would like to do. But really, like we make a very it's a living beer. There's yeast in there. It's very much like as close to that craft thing that we're making that you could get. It's just not adulterated. We use extremely good quality raw materials. Like, we do strive to not use any kind of additives or extracts if we can avoid it. It really is like when I talked about that Chiversified earlier.
Right.
It's like we're like looking at grinding whole spices. So I'm buying all these whole spices. We grind them ourselves and then put them into the brewing process. With fruit, if I could buy whole fruit they just picked and put it in my fermenters, I would. We can't because of the structure of the process and the equipment we have. But we don't use extracts. We use real fruit.
And I would say that in terms of our core beers, the ones that if we say it's a Belgian triple, Belgian style triple, or a Belgian style double, it's very authentic. It's the recipe that we're following is very similar to the recipe that they would follow in Belgium if you were there. I'd say we've modernized our canning, like by just putting that into cans and not going with the authentic bottle conditioned format. Like we've definitely modernized the packaging a little bit.
Sure.
But just in terms of the base, it's great ingredients. It's following a traditional recipe, and it's not like we're not Americanizing it in any way when it comes to that. Like when it comes to our core recipes, we're obviously taking some liberties with some of our seasonals, but
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
and the cool thing, we intentionally enter like the Brussels Beer Challenge every year.
Yes.
The European Beer Awards. Like that is like, if we can send a can over and our can beats the large format bottles that are coming out of Belgium or some of the really good places that they produce in Canada, like that for us is like, all right, we're doing this.
Yep.
We're doing this right.
Yeah, we got 2 medals at the Brussels Beer Challenge, and
Oh, wow.
to me, like that was a huge win for us because it's just we're competing with the people that have inspired us to make these beers, and we're winning like right up next to them. So it was kind of a
fantastic accomplishment.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
really good. It was really
Like
good.
our qualified beat out St. Bernardus 12, which is, that's like a famous
Wow.
beer for one of these awards. They got silver, so it was like, this is all right. This feels pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Do you think you guys will do more and more competitions over on across the pond?
we enter the big ones are like the Great American Beer Festival,
Sure.
World Beer Cup, and that probably is like the creme de la creme. But like the Brussels Beer Challenge, the European Beer Star, we can't enter everything, and we probably don't want to enter every competition there is, but we're going to continue to enter. One thing that I don't like to brew for competitions.
Yeah.
Like we brew the beer that we want to brew, and we brew to styles with our main beers. Some of the seasonals, what style does that fit into? It's kind of a specialty thing when we start adding a lot of stuff to it. But like we don't make special batches to send to a competition. If you go and buy a can of qualified or deduction, it's what we enter into the competition.
Nice.
We will do tasting panels to make sure that we were extremely pleased with that batch, and we'll send it. But like we don't make a small batch to send to the competition. So I don't know. I've gotten sidetracked there, but for the most part,
That's good, man. That's good.
And then we need to get to the how, right? Why what how is that?
Yeah. What makes you stand out?
And honestly, so that one thing right there to me is a big thing.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that that maybe do brew for a competition. We enter competitions because they're you want to. It's good feedback. It's good to have for marketing, I suppose, and it kind of is good for morale.
Well, and I think from sorry, David, I didn't mean to cut you off. From a financial perspective, the how is amazingly like our core lineup, exemption, deduction. Those are our 2 best-selling mainstay beers, and we sell. How we can continue to produce Belgian beers that they are selling really well. Like those two products have been moving extremely well. Our market share has continued to grow. Our volume, at each retail locations continue to do quite well, which is one of the things I think that in the beginning surprised us. We weren't entirely sure like what's the upper end volume you can sell of a Belgian double in Indiana. I don't know how much of a triple.
Yeah.
So we're continuing to see 7,000-8,000 cases of these particular beers go out a year, and it's and that's pretty amazing.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
All right, last question. When I sit down with a client for the first time, I hate to look out too far, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. So when I sit down with somebody for the first time, I say, look, if we were to sit down again in 3 years, what would need to take place, whether it's personally, financially, emotionally, that we can look back on and say our time spent was valuable, we're working our way to where we want to be, as it pertains to you guys' business. If we were to sit down 3 years from now, what do you envision coming out of the chaos of last year that we just experienced? What do you guys envision for Taxman that if we sat down 3 years from now, you can kind of look back and say, yeah, we started some things we were pretty excited about, and maybe some things that kind of went down us a different path, and now we're happy about it. So what would you guys think about it? It's kind of open-ended. You guys can take it for what you will and be interested.
I mean, from my perspective, I would like to see us continue to invest in the technology we need to make better product. I think there's some things that we talked about from a packaging perspective that we'd like to add. I know we'd like to add pasteurization if we ever want to get in, like our product into cans from a sour perspective. So I'd hope 3 years from now we could say, yeah, we have one of the best sour beer programs in cans in the area. Like that would be really cool. Technology to help everybody's day as well. Just like ease the burden.
Sure.
There's still some things we do that are incredibly manual. Just to kind of make everybody's job better. I don't know. I'd hope we could sit back and say yes. We've got the volumes that everybody's happy in their jobs and they're well paid and they're in a very content position from that perspective. Beer wise, I don't.
I mean, it's tough because we're in a not unique, but not a lot of people have the position we're in as far as breweries go, where we can make the variety of beers that we make, because we are a self-distributed for the most part operation. Like we can have a bunch of SKUs. We can make all kinds of different stuff, and our sales team is keyed in with that. We want to continue doing that and continue to come out with new things. Myself and my team enjoy a great deal, like the challenge of making a recipe that is different. Sometimes we'll use our equipment in ways maybe it wasn't exactly designed for because we're trying to accomplish something that system wasn't really built to make. So like these challenges are great because we can sit around and we can talk about them, and I want to keep challenging my brewers and entertaining ourselves, because that's kind of, again, a lot of people in this industry are here because we want to be here. It's a labor of love, so it's like having the ability to do these different unique beers instead of kind of maybe making the same thing day in, day out. The process is cool, but that challenge is also important.
Yeah, we definitely took the position early on that this is not going to be the biggest commercial venture in the city. This is not going to, we're a very niche market within a niche market. So if you look at like beer as a whole, local craft may represent at this point like 5% of the total Indiana beer market. And then if you drill down into that, like Belgian beer within craft beer represents like a tiny portion of that. So like we know that we're not going to be like, we're not there to be the biggest commercial brewery. It's more like David was saying, the team, they want to make things that are unique. They want to make things that are inspiring to them. But also if we can add in technology, then it makes everyone's life easier, that makes quality better. I'd say that's probably where we're most interested in investing.
Fantastic. Well, boys, thank you for your time. I've really enjoyed getting to know you guys, hearing your story. So appreciate it greatly. Cheers, man.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right. Everybody, come check out Taxman, Cityway downtown, Bargeville at the home base or mothership as I got to experience, or even out in Fortville on the north side. So check us out for the next episode, but listen to this one. Great guys at Taxman. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. For the latest on financial views with local brews, please check out our website at financialviewswithlocalbrews.com. You can also find us on YouTube via our channel there under the same name, Financial Views with Local Brews, as well as follow us on all of our social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, where you can like and connect with us throughout the craft beer universe that we're trying to explore here in the great state of Indiana. As always, cheers. The next round's on me, and I look forward to seeing you for future episodes. Bye, everyone.